Yeah, this is a historic day in France, and it's a case that has shocked and horrified the country in equal measure. Dominique Pelicot has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for aggravated rape of his former wife, as well as making and distributing images of her. Now, this was the maximum sentence that was requested by the prosecution, and under French law, it is the maximum sentence that he could receive. Now, his sentencing was watched on by his former wife, Gisèle Pelicot, and his children in court. They didn't give much emotion, but Gisèle is said to have rested her head against the wall while his sentence was read out. Now, Dominique Pelicot is accused of drugging his wife so that she was unconscious, and then inviting strangers over to his house that he'd met on chat rooms over 9 years, beginning from 2011. So this is abuse that is said to have taken place over almost a decade, and it wasn't until 2020 that he was actually caught. He was caught upskirting women in public, and when police searched his devices, they found 20,000 videos and images of his then wife, Gisèle Pelicot, unconscious, being assaulted by dozens of men. Now, Gisèle, she was completely unaware of this taking place. She had some memory loss and was concerned about certain symptoms that were appearing, but she was unaware that this was going on while she was rendered unconscious for many, many years. So this is a shocking case in France, and the sentence of 20 years, that maximum sentence, has been welcomed there.
Yes, and at the same time, Michelle, the judge also read out the verdicts and the sentences of dozens of the other men who had also raped or sexually assaulted Gisèle Pelicot.
Yes, so Dominique Pelicot stood trial alongside 50 other men. Now, these 50 men are those men that I described, many of which were met in chat rooms by Dominique and were invited over to his home to then assault his wife. Now, all of those 50 men have been found guilty of at least one charge. 47 men, I believe, including Dominique Pelicot, were found guilty of aggravated rape. 2 were found guilty of attempted rape, and then another 2 were found guilty of sexual assault. And now their sentencing has ranged from 3 years up until 15 years. Many of those sentences were below what the prosecution had recommended, and so there's been some concern expressed already in France. These sentences were only just handed down, but there's already been concern from activist groups that some of these sentences are not long enough and don't match the crimes that were committed. The Pelicot family, so the children of Dominique and Gisèle Pelicot, are said to have expressed some disappointment at these sentences as well in the court. Again, though, Gisèle Pelicot is said to have just laid her head against the wall while she heard her perpetrators being given their sentences.
And of course, Michelle, this shocking case, as you mentioned, had a huge impact in France, and it's prompted a rethink of the country's rape laws. How might this change as a result of the verdicts and the sentencing?
Yeah, so I think a really, really important thing to note here is that we know about this case, and it has received the global media attention that it has because Gisèle Pelicot, the survivor in this case, she chose to waive her anonymity. And this meant that media was allowed to cover this trial and that the atrocities that were committed against her were made public. Now, she said that she did this because she wanted to transfer the shame from herself and to put it where it rightly belongs, and that is with those that perpetrated these crimes against her. She's been heralded as a hero in France and as a feminist figure and an icon. She's been applauded when she arrived in court. And so this has really allowed for people to become aware of this case, and potentially for other women that may be in similar situations to start being aware of some of the warning signs. And from this, we've then had debates about French law and is it adequate and does it cover cases like this? Now, the reason that France's rape laws in particular have come under the spotlight is because as they currently stand, they define rape as penetration committed against another person that involves violence, constraint, threat or surprise. And the issue of consent isn't in there at all. And so Gisèle Pelicot was unable to give consent as she was unconscious. And there was some concern initially that potentially the sentences for these men may not meet the standard required of the French rape laws because the issue of consent became quite murky and because, again, it isn't part of the French rape laws. However, we've seen that, again, Dominique Pelicot has received that maximum sentence, and so It appears that in this case that it has been found to apply, but there are some people that are looking to strengthen those laws in France, including some senior politicians. So going forward, we'll be looking at how this historic case, this mass rape trial, may change France and what we can expect in terms of its legal system, and also as a society and what people accept of men in today's day and age.
Okay, Michelle Rimmer, thanks very much for keeping us up to date with this breaking story out of France. And if this story has raised any issues for you, you can get help by calling the National Sexual Assault and Family Violence Counseling Helpline on 1-800-RESPECT, which is 1-800-737-732.